Today, we're going to talk about a really powerful new way to think about and heal addiction based on the amazing work of Michael Barnett.
So let's just start with a question that kind of flips the whole script. What if the way we've been taught to see addiction, as some kind of moral failing or a sign of weakness, what if that's just completely wrong?
And this is the core idea we're exploring today. Addiction isn't actually the main problem. It's a solution. It's a coping strategy that people use for unbearable pain, especially when they feel totally and completely alone.
Okay, so let's really dive into this new perspective, because it really does change everything about how we understand what addiction is, and maybe just as important, what it isn't.
This slide just lays it out so clearly. On the left, you've got that old story, the one that's filled with so much shame and blame. But on the right, this new framework, it sees addiction as a deeply human, totally understandable survival strategy. It's not some defect in your character, it's a response to real pain. It's a substitute for the connection that, as humans, we all desperately, desperately need. So what is this pain? Where does it even come from? Well, the argument is that it comes from this profound, painful sense of disconnection. And to really understand the power of connection versus disconnection, the source material points to two major American tragedies, and their psychological aftermaths were just worlds apart. Okay, just look at the numbers here. It's pretty stark. After 9/11, New Yorkers fled toward their homes, toward their communities, and the PTSD rate was about 5%. But after Hurricane Katrina, people were scattered. Their communities were just shattered. They fled from their homes. The PTSD rate there, a staggering 33%. The key difference was whether or not there was a safe, connected community to turn to. And that's the whole point. When our social fabric gets torn, so does our personal resilience. And tragically, this shows the real-world cost of that disconnection. During just one 12-month period of the pandemic, over 100,000 people in the U.S. died from drug overdoses. That's a devastating number, and it's directly linked to the pain of isolation. So all of this really points to one core concept: dislocation. And listen, this isn't just about being physically alone. It's a deep rupture in our sense of belonging, our connection to others, to our community, even to ourselves and our purpose. And the argument here is that this is the true engine driving addiction. So if dislocation is the poison, what's the antidote? Well, it's about tapping into our most fundamental biological need: human connection.
I mean, think about it. From the moment we're born, our relationships start building this kind of blueprint in our minds. Psychologists call it an attachment style, and it becomes the very lens we use to see ourselves, to see other people, and to cope with stress for the rest of our lives.
This model kind of helps break it down. Our attachment strategy is really shaped by two big things: our view of ourselves, like, am I worthy of love? And our view of others, are they going to be there for me? When both are positive, we feel secure. But if we see ourselves as worthy, but we think others are unreliable, we might become avoidant, keep people at a distance. If we see others as dependable but doubt our own worth, we can become anxious, always needing reassurance. And if we have a negative view of both ourselves and others, we can become fearful avoidant, craving connection but also being terrified of it. And this part is just so, so important. Having an insecure attachment style is not a flaw. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's actually a brilliant, understandable strategy that a person developed just to survive in a world where safe, dependable care just wasn't an option. Okay, so how does this feeling of disconnection actually lead to the act of using a substance? Well, to figure that out, we have to look at the emotional story that's playing out inside. So, to understand that path, we first have to get what emotions are even for. They aren't just random static or interruptions to our day. They're actually a sophisticated biological guidance system. They're there to keep us safe and connected. So every single emotional experience follows this basic sequence. It starts with a cue, some kind of event. That cue triggers an inner narrative. That's the story we tell ourselves about what just happened. That story then creates physical feelings in our body. And finally, those feelings prime an action tendency, this powerful urge to either move towards something or get away from it. And this reframes the whole thing. What if addictive behavior isn't some separate, mysterious force? What if it's just the final step, a hijacked action tendency, and an emotional story that starts with deep, often invisible, pain? So, this brings us all the way back around to the central message of this entire framework: the incredible power of human relationships when it comes to healing.
All right, let's just recap the big takeaways here. First, addiction is not a moral failing. It's a very human response to unbearable pain. Second, the root of that pain is often dislocation, that profound loss of connection. Third, the antidote to that dislocation is secure human connection. And finally, real healing starts when we can decode the emotional story that's driving the behavior in the first place. And this leaves us with a final, really powerful question to sit with. In a world that is struggling so much with addiction, could it be that our most effective path to healing isn't found in judgment or willpower, but in this simple, profound act of building stronger, safer connections with each other?